Perl has got a long and rich history of supporting startups. In the first .com boom, Perl was one of the engine rooms powering that boom. And now with Perl 6, we've got another engine of growth that's potentially about to start up. So I want to talk about using Perl 6 in startups. I want to describe my own process of starting up, the lessons I've learned over 20 years of trying to do it. It's a difficult thing to do, and there's lots of pitfalls. And I'm hoping to show you some of the pitfalls that I've had so that you can avoid them, and we can build more successful Perl-based startups. So the talk is mostly about Perl 6. It's mostly about startups. There is some Perl 6 content, but there won't be Perl 6 source code. So if you like a talk where you see lots of source code, then I won't be offended if you want to move on. So this talk is about the process of starting up and how you could potentially use Perl 6 in that process. So 1997, I thought this would be a good idea for a startup. Autosig.com. So if anyone remembers 1997 here, the 96K baud modems that we had, the slow wait downloading anything from the internet, the last thing you'd want would be to receive an email with one of these graphic files in the base of the email. But despite the fact that I knew this, I still thought that this might be a good idea. So that you could come along here and buy an Autosig for $5, and then you could inflict it upon all the people you knew. And then if you were really crazy, you might spend $20 for the limited edition signature. Just madness, really. But that was a learning experience for me. What did I learn? Well, actually, I learned, Perl could do a lot. Perl didn't say no at any point. Perl was the least of my problems. It helped me do that. I was able to speak easily to the GD library for rendering the text on top of the image. So Perl was the least of the problems there. The problems actually rested with me. I could have had a bit more empathy. I could have thought about what is the recipient of this message going to feel like when they get this big whack of bytes down their slow modem? But on the other hand, I also learned about basic e-commerce, dealing with credit cards, etc. And so this was the beginning of starting to get started. The next business was Zoom tickets. And using the experience that I'd had with generating the images in Autosig, I thought, wouldn't it be good if you could sell tickets online, have the user be able to print out the tickets, and then have some sort of barcode, which when the person goes to the event, they could have the barcode scanned by a laser reader. So that was the idea behind Zoom tickets. So I spent about 3.5 months building this, doing the seat allocation system, etc. A lot of work. And then I went to see a promoter in the West End of London to say, here's my idea, Zoom tickets. What do you think? I was about to get out the Palm Pilot that I'd programmed to show how the barcode would work. And the guy had a cigar and he was saying, you don't need to show me that thing. Don't show me your thing. And all I wanted to do was get my thing out and show him. He's going, no, don't show me the thing. Don't show me the thing. And he's smoking away on his cigar. And he basically said I had a snowflake's chance of being able to sell tickets in this way, even though it would be good for the consumer to be able to get their tickets, print them out straight off the web, don't have to wait, could buy tickets at the last minute, etc. So it was a good idea, helpful to the customer, helpful to the user, but ultimately impossible, because the guy with the cigar said the venues won't have it. They control the way tickets are sold in those venues, and they won't let you do it. So he said, I don't need to see the device. I can tell you it won't work. I said, no, but it will work. He said, no, you don't get it. It won't work. And that was another moment of learning where I just thought, gee, I could have saved all this time. I could have called him up on the first day that I embarked on this and said, what do you think about this idea? And he would have said it wouldn't have worked. So I didn't actually have to do all that development. If only I'd got out of the building earlier and spoken to him, then I would have saved myself a lot of time. That's the next thing I learned. 12 years later, I enjoy watching rugby in Bath, and they had a new ticketing system announced. And I walked down into the stadium, and a guy gets out a SPT 1500 and scans the barcode on my season's ticket. And then I just had a flashback to that promoter and just thinking, no! So every time I get scanned there, I think of that. But you've got to move on with startups. You just got to pick yourself up and go again. And so that's what I did. So I trained as a lawyer, and I thought, wouldn't it be good if all the lawyers could send documents securely to each other rather than emailing them in plain text as attached documents. So I learnt my lesson from the previous one. I got out of the building earlier. I tried to advertise this, and in doing that, I realized there was actually no demand, or very little demand, for encrypted email. People weren't even searching for it. I phoned around a lot of the CTOs in London of legal firms, and they were not interested. Thank you, but no thanks. So I moved on quickly from there as well. But in trying to advertise this startup, I came upon the pay-per-click search engine model, which I thought, now that is a good model. And I took a lot of the code that I'd written in E1 Mail, Zoom tickets, and before, and then started up this search engine, Turbo 10, which it's, so remember this is like 1999, so Google has come out and is becoming more and more popular, but there's other engines around like Alta Vista and Lycos, they're still around. And its opening USP was the fact that it could load the results on the client side. So effectively a very early form of Ajax. And so that you could paginate through the results very quickly. So what happened then was I started actually getting some customers, advertisers signing up. But then I had another problem. How do I get more users to come and click on those advertisements? So I needed to improve the search engine. So next thing was, well, okay, let's search the deep net. Create a meta search engine that searches other search engines, but lots of them. Perl didn't say no to me here either. It just said, yep, no problem. That's a job for Perl. And it went through various iterations, extra features being added, etc. But in all honesty, I wasn't getting to the end user. So we weren't really growing the user base. Why? Because at this time, Google was really starting to take off. And people were just in the habit of using Google. And once people are in a habit, a loop, it's very hard to get into that loop. So then I did a pivot. I thought, well, okay, I'll partner with other search engines who do have users. And so that's what happened. I used the meta search technology that I'd created to talk to other search engines, but instead of talking to other search engines, talking to other ad feeds. So aggregated ads into the system and then sent the ads back out through the network. And this business ran for 9-10 years. and it was profitable and it worked well. So the pivoting got to a place of economic opportunity, and that window of opportunity lasted for about 9, 10 years. So I learned some things on the way to pivot, to try and reuse the things that you've got, to think about taking the code that you've made and positioning it so that it actually sort of solves a problem, and you can build some wealth that way. But in the end, what happened was the recession came and my partners went out of business, and then actually the whole network then closed down. And then once that happened, then the core business also closed. So that's the end there. So what am I doing now? Well, I'm helping other founders with their businesses, with their startups, mainly Perl. And it's been really interesting to get to know other people in that startup process, and sometimes non-technical people, so non-technical founders, because actually they care about a different system. They're not really caring about the technical system. It's slightly interesting, but the main system they're interested in is the business system. And that's something that I wish I'd sort of focused on earlier. And it's something that I'd like to highlight today. And I hope that that's something that you can work with. The other interesting thing is most of the founders have got hot tubs. I don't know why. But I've never got into them, so I'm happy not to be in the founder's hot tub. So that's my really bad drawing of Elon Musk there, sitting in his hot tub, thinking about going to Mars, having a rocket taking off and going there. The flavour of startup that I'm interested in isn't the kind of Elon Musk out of this world startup. It's more down to earth, one that could be potentially started with little or no capital, that could be sweat capitalized. And you may have heard of the lean startup, which is a methodology for doing that. And that's really, when I read that book a number of years ago, that really sort of crystallized a lot of the things that I've been doing naturally, but it came up with a much more sort of rigorous methodology for doing it. And I strongly recommend that book if you're interested in doing a startup. Has anybody read The Lean Startup? Okay, great. Well, you'll probably see some ideas from that book in the rest of this talk. Okay, so Elon Musk is thinking about going to Mars, but actually startups can be really quite simple and quite small. They don't have to be big endeavors. And there are, for me, 3 levels of sort of financial points in the trajectory of a startup. The first is OBE, operational break-even, PBE, personal break-even, and DBE, dream break-even. And if you're Elon Musk, that involves Mars, but if you're not Elon Musk, that might involve having a nice retirement or something else, something less ambitious. Personal break-even is basically where your venture is paying enough for you to do it 100% of the time, for you to not have to work elsewhere. You're effectively free to work on your startup. So it's not bad being in that PBE state, because you get to be creative and make things. So when I was talking about the hot tub and the business system that other founders think about, that high-level thing, it really is this, that what is a business? Well, it's a value exchange system between customers and the thing. And what gets exchanged? Value things and dollars. But then the question is, what's in the question mark box? What do we put in there? What generates the value that then generates the revenue? And then ideally you want the customers to introduce new customers, that there's a kind of an internal engine of growth helping to grow the startup internally. It's like firing an engine and then having the engine tick over itself. So here is the startup process that I'm following, and it's a synthesis of the mistakes I've made in the past, the things I've learned from the lean startup, and it's an ongoing thing, so subject to change. But the first step is actually what happens before you have the idea for your startup. And in this phase, it's all about feeling the pain. So having kind of your antenna out for listening for things that need to be solved, problems that come up. And it's good to log those things so that you can, there's a kind of a fermenting period that goes on. And then if this pain sort of recurs, then it might be something that other people are feeling as well. And then it could be something that other people are willing to pay to go away, to fix. So this could be the beginnings of an idea. It's at that point that you might want to get out your lean canvas and think about how the idea could work in practice, to think about the business model that might protect the idea, that might kind of surround it. And we'll go through that in a second. But then once you've had your idea, then you can start to test the riskiest assumptions that you've uncovered in the model. And we'll talk about that in a bit. After that process, you might then be in a position where you think, actually, there is something to this. I'm going to build an MVP, a minimum viable product, where M stands for like the minimal product. And we'll see what I mean by that. And then the next step is to test your assumption. Is it actually true? And if it is, great. But if not, you either need to pivot or actually don't go any further. And if I had have done that for the previous businesses, I would have saved myself a lot of time, money, and effort had I done that. So here are the 4 things that are currently in my incubator, ideas that I'm cooking. 6fix, Site Mapper, 123do, and Jump to Pay It. I think 6fix is probably, hopefully, more interesting to you, so we'll start with that. This is the lean canvas for 6fix. 6fix is a weekly email, a Perl 6 problem that gets emailed to you, and basically you have an answer. You have to answer it to get the next 6fix. So unless you answer the 6fix, you don't get another one. So this isn't a startup business in a monetary sense, but it's a venture. It's a startup venture. So it doesn't have a revenue stream. Well, the revenue, the thing that the benefit is that actually it's about learning Perl 6. So it's not the revenue isn't financial. And you see there the costs, very small. It runs in Amazon S3, Amazon EC2. And yeah, you can see the considerations of what the thing is trying to solve. So having done that, it was time to get out of the building. Now, people wanting to learn, I couldn't go out of the building, go around to my local store, speak to an old lady and go, would you like to learn Perl 6 once a week if I sent you an email? And she'd probably say, well, you're crazy. So instead, getting out of the building meant actually logging into the IRC channel and asking the people in Perl 6, what do you think of this? Getting their feedback. And generally they were positive. I started off with the idea that it would be a daily email question. And the feedback here immediately is, well, actually daily would be too much. And to be honest, daily would be too much to actually, as an author, it'd be too much work to do it per day. So I had my first pivot at that point. We weren't going to do daily anymore, it'd be weekly. So there was a real advantage in getting out of the building, talking to the customers or potential customers, seeing if there was any interest, and then seeing actually what they would like. And you can sign up for 6fix if you want to get a weekly dose of Perl 6. If you go to 6fix.nigelhamilton.com, you'll see this sign-on page, and just pop your email in there, and then you'll get your first Perl 6 question. And it runs for 7 weeks. Okay, so that's just a little example of a little venture and a little summary of the lean startup process. Now I wonder if you've had ideas in the past where you've thought about things that you might start up. And they don't necessarily need to be businesses, they could be projects or open source endeavors. So I'd just like to take 5-10 minutes. I'd like you to fill out the lean canvas there with a startup idea that you may have had. And if you haven't had a startup idea, no problem. You could write it from the perspective of your own company or a company that you know. So it doesn't have to be an original idea. But yeah, can we just do that for the next 5-10 minutes? Oh. Has anyone got a spare pencil? 6fix.nigelhamilton.com. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's possible to find the homepage of
Yeah.
below.
Okay. You got it? Good. Okay.
Things like unfair advantage and
Mm-hmm.
customer segment.
Yes. Okay. Um, so. So what would be an example? So for customer segments, do you have an are you able to share what you're thinking?
Yeah, well, I'm just sort of, it's just an idea that I had a while that popped into my head that I wasn't, this is an idea that I thought I would try and map it out here.
Yeah.
But basically we moved into a hot desking environment, and I thought some kind of mapping software for companies that are hot desking that tell you who's at the desk, where they are, if they're in, and maybe add meeting room,
Yeah.
booking, whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so definitely one customer segment would be the tenants of the hot desk. So hot desk tenants would be one customer segment. Yeah. And then the unfair advantage in that situation might be that you've got a monopoly on the area, that the hot desk area or something, that you've got an agreement that it'll only be your mapping software that's used, or something like this. That would be an unfair advantage.
So if you already had some sort of agreement with the company,
Yeah.
and you said, and we build this software, you can't buy anywhere else.
Yeah, an exclusive agreement, yeah.
They don't all look the same. Some of them have the small side buttons, some don't.
Okay. That's weird. So if you could just go through the different boxes there and put a number, if you could rank 1, 2, 3, the top sort of 3 assumptions you think are the riskiest. Of the assumptions you're making there, which ones are the riskiest? The ones that you're not really 100% sure will pan out. Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions about what they've just done? Did it help you sort of explore the model of your idea, how it would work in real life? Did you find that? No? Okay. Well, if you did have a risky assumption there, the first thing to do is actually to test it. So the MVP process, the lean startup process, is looking to test assumptions as soon as possible, and then either pivot or do something different. And here is an example of a test that I've been running recently. This is for a startup idea called Jump to Pay It, and it's for a sort of like a URL shortening scheme for sending someone a URL if they owe you any money. Here's a link, please click it and pay me some money. So I was able to test this idea by firstly going onto Google, seeing how much it costs to advertise for the search terms that people might use. Firstly, is anybody searching for your idea? That's actually one of the first things that you can test. And Google will tell you that for free. How many people are using the search terms that you think your customers might use? So that's a great first step to validate your idea. And I mean, this form it didn't start off like this, it was much simpler. It got more and more detailed as the test continued. I did over a number of days, and I had all sorts of figures going in here, up to $2,500. And I increased the commission rate as well to see if that had an effect on reducing the amount that people would put through. So I was able to learn quite a lot there about the prospective customer, their email address, contact details, how much they were looking to be paid, etc. And all of that before actually building the product. So in a way, this was the MVP before the MVP. So this is called a landing page test, and it's a really useful device to basically learn things as quickly as possible. So you might have had some assumptions on your form just there that you could potentially test with a landing page test. Are people searching for the pain that you're looking to solve, the problem that you're looking to solve? So it turns out that the Jump to Pay It landing test site, the SixFix site, behind the scenes they're all using the same engine. So now going down from the business model back down to the technical model, the technical world, what's going on there is that there's a business engine and a value engine. And within the business engine is the API that stores things like events, user details, charges, credit cards, etc. And I just want to share with you that API. It's the business engine API. It's about being happy. It's good for entrepreneurs. It enables them to create multiple businesses. It's a multi-tenanted API, so you can have multiple businesses sitting within the same API. And here are the routes. Oh, it's powered by Modulicious. It's a Perl 5 service. It's sitting in EC2, and it has a Postgres SQL backend because it needs to have an effective JSON data store, and Postgres SQL provides that. So that's its high-level overview. There's a Perl 6 client for it. There's a Perl 5 client. It comes into that endpoint, and then we store events, user details, card details, etc. Not the credit card detail, but the card token. I'll explain that in a sec. And there is a worker queue for sending jobs, for sending emails and other things, powered by Rescue. So that's the back end for the business engine. Here are some of the routes. We have users, login, email, events. Events are important because they're a generic occurrence within the system. So if you're interested in particular metrics, then you need to fire an event because then it will report how many of those events have occurred. And then we have the cards and the charges for doing transactions. There's a deploy route, which is hooked up to Bitbucket, so that whenever you make a change on Bitbucket, a webhook fires and then the service redeploys. So there's a very fast turnaround time, if I ever have to do that, but not very often. So here is another startup in the nursery. This has got past the initial testing phase, and this is now we're going to move into MVP. So it's not a fully ready MVP, but it's getting there soon. And it's powered partially by Perl 6. So Perl 6 serves the roots of the website that the user comes to. This is the integration with Stripe, the card provider, which the business engine talks to. And this is the overall architecture. Well, yeah, this is how the back end. I wouldn't call it an architecture really, but we have Sitemapper. Nginx is serving the static files. Bailador is doing the Perl 6 roots, and it's using a Perl 6 client to talk to the business engine to deal with users, transactions, events, etc. And then there's the VE client, which is the value engine. And that's because most businesses that I've worked on break down to these two simple subsystems. The business engine, which does the boring business of transactions and emails and all the stuff that's generic for 99% of businesses. And then the value engine is the thing that differentiates your business, which ultimately is solving the problem that your customer is paying for. Your customer doesn't pay you to whack their credit card. They're paying you for some service, which they then let you whack their credit card for. And this is working well. The Perl 6 web app, I translated it from Perl 5. In Perl 5, I had it in different modules. In Perl 6, because I could do it in less space, more succinctly, it then just sort of naturally came into one file. So I have the roots, and then each root gets dealt with within the one file. So it's very succinct and clear. The Bailador web app framework comes with two default template engines, Mustache and kind of a Mojo style engine. Excuse me. And I found that the Mustache one was a little slow. So I replaced that with a very tiny templating solution. And now it's quick enough to serve. It's fit for the purpose that I need it for. So that is the beginnings of a Perl 6 assisted startup. And I hope that there'll be many more Perl 6 startups. This just describes what's going on inside the business engine. Stripe is the credit card provider. But if you're here in Lee Johnson's talk, Go Cardless, etc., there's lots of other card providers that you could potentially slot into that position. So depending on the financial considerations. The value engine for Sitemapper, or I should explain what Sitemapper is. Sitemapper provides sitemaps for websites and sends them to Google. So at a number of places I've worked at, they've needed to update Google with new pages that have been created or generated. And there's sometimes a delay between Google's crawler coming and the page being picked up. So if you want the page picked up as soon as possible, you get it into your sitemap as soon as possible, and then you can ping Google to come and get your sitemap. And then then update their content. So the initial test showed that actually quite a lot of SMEs want this service because they don't want to go to the bother of generating this XML sitemap themselves. So that was enough evidence for me to then go to the next point in the process. And that's the value engine there. That's the thing that actually they're paying for. This ability to crawl their site, update their sitemap, and then submit it automatically to Google and have that running regularly in a hosted way behind the scenes. So generally the process is about serving. That's the first point. You're serving a need. You're serving the customer. And actually then everything follows from that. The learning of what does the customer actually need, how can I do it better, and then from there, there's the earning. But the first point is to start with, how can I serve a need? How can I scratch an itch? That's the trick, I think. And I hope that I've inspired you to consider maybe doing your own Perl 6 powered startup. Does anyone have any questions or comments or? I accept updates. Yeah, you can send me an email and I'll make an update.
When you picked Modulis's Postgres, was that an Amazon? Was that just because you're familiar with those, or was that you saying this is a recommended tool?
All of the above. Yeah, I'm familiar with it, and it works well, and Postgres is fit for purpose for the JSON storage.
Your mock-up landing page, people actually come in there, but there's actually nothing behind it. Doesn't that make you feel a bit like you are,
Yeah, that's a fair question. Well, I'm not scamming anyone, and then I'm not taking their money. And it was interesting that I did receive some people who were looking to scam me because they were saying, "How much are you going to pay me?" etc. But no, that's a fair point. And I think what happens is when you do fill out that form, it says, "Sorry, we're not open for business just yet. Thank you for your interest. We'll get back to you when we do open." So it slightly softens the effect there. Yeah, but that's a fair point. But the value in learning before you do it, it is a valuable thing to be able to do that.
but should be too successful because then you have too many visitors on your mock site and
Well,
all be disappointed.
Well, if you've got that, then that's a would like to have problem, because then you should be in business. Yeah, you should be in business at that point. In which case, turn your experiment off, turn your MVP on, and then, yeah.
Do you hire people to help out, or are you the whole? I mean, you're doing the JavaScript as well. And
That's a good point. Actually, I do, and actually, someone who helps me is in the room. I'd like to quick shout out to RPad. Thank you for your support, RPad. So he helps me. I also I use some people through Elance, which has now become, I've lost track of the name. It changes name all the time. Upwork, yeah, Upwork, that's it. And for the Upwork for sort of the graphic design and some of the JavaScript stuff, yeah. So I use Design Crowd for logo generation, and they do sort of crowdsourced logos. So it's an easy way to get a logo created. and everything is in AWS because you can start small, and of course you can you can grow if you need to.
A lot of my ideas are about things that probably would not occur to the Google searchers because it's a kind of new thing. So you're testing stuff that people are actually already searching for problems that are. It's a problem, not a solution. That's probably the right words. A lot of time people don't know they have a certain problem, like I need an iPad or something like that.
Yes.
And actually, they turned out to have this problem and buy iPads.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So there can be other ways that you can test. Oh, sorry. The question was, there are some problems for which people don't search. They don't have a search for, before there were iPads, no one said, I want an iPad to search. And that's the thing. There are some problems for which people may not be searching for the solution. And I think that's a fair point. But then you need some way to be able to test that with your target market. So you need to find another way to get to your target market.
In my experience, that's actually what things like Kickstarter are mostly valuable for, is kind of proving the question of, is there enough demand once you introduce the idea to people? And I know a lot of folks that use things like that, or just the dummy websites that just say, here's our thing, here's a mock-up, if you're interested, let us know, and we'll let you know when it's coming to fruition. And then I know people who spend a few $100s on Google Ads just to get the idea out there and see how many people sign up.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's some good ideas there, definitely. Yeah, so your suggestion there was that Kickstarter and some of the other sites where you can basically put an idea out there, you can get a response back, some validation basically as to, is there some interest in this idea?
Yeah, or even putting up a mock-up of the site and just doing a very small spend on advertising and let people then go to the site and sign up and say, I want to know more when this is ready.
Yes, and also having a mock-up where you can sign on and put an email in and basically get back to them when the site is up and running. So in a way, that is kind of an MVP. That's minimal MVP, which is good. Basically, anything that helps get you some learning, gets you closer to the solution that might be useful. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks for listening.